My golden sister got me kicked out of the house, but now I'm back, and she had to beg for forgiveness on her knees. My name is Max. I'm 28 years old, and my entire life has felt like an endless soap opera where my older sister Leah is the star, and I'm just an extra. Leah, now 30, has always been the golden child, the one everyone admires. Picture this. She's beautiful, smart, and can lie so convincingly that any fib she tells sounds like gospel truth. Growing up, she could easily pin any of her mischief on me, and no one would question it for a second. And me? I was always that guy who, according to our parents, just didn't measure up. Here's a classic example. I landed a promotion I had worked months for, barely sleeping 3 hours a night. I came home, hoping for at least a small pat on the back. And what do I hear? If it had been Leah, she would have done it faster. Gee, thanks, Mom. That really made me feel like I'd grown a couple of inches from the praise. But all that was minor compared to what came next. Leah put on a grand show, claiming she'd lost her precious earrings, the family heirloom she was entrusted with as the responsible one. And guess who got blamed for stealing them? Yep, me. I knew she was just lying, but her performance was flawless. Leah orchestrated the drama so well it could have been sold as a TV show. First there were her tears, Oscar-worthy sobbing, then that haunting look she gave me, like I was the villain of her life story. And my parents? They immediately turned on the "we're disappointed but not surprised" mode. My mom actually said to me, "You've always been the problem, Max." Of course, I tried to explain how ridiculous it was, but who cared? My arguments might as well have been a cat trying to convince you it deserves your food, not its own. My parents didn't even want to listen. Once again, Leah was the innocent princess, and I was the loser who'd stolen the family jewels. In 5 minutes flat, they told me to pack my things. "There's no room for a thief in this house, Max." Dramatic, but it gets the point across. So I packed what I had, a laptop, a couple of t-shirts, and some sneakers, and stepped out, feeling like an absolute idiot. I stood outside, looking back at the lit-up windows of the house I grew up in, and only one thought circled in my head. Now, that's a plot twist. Out on the street, I was, to put it mildly, in shock. It wasn't just despair and anger. It was a complete cocktail of emotions that would launch into a full rock opera of rage if I paused for even a second. But sitting around feeling sorry for myself? Way too boring. I decided, all right, if I'm a homeless genius now, I might as well make it work. At first, I crashed with friends, and to be honest, it was nothing like the fun you see in movies. Every day was a new person, a new couch, and that constant feeling like I was just one wrong look away from overstaying my welcome. "Hey man, you're still here?" Hearing that every morning was a stark reminder of my new, nomadic lifestyle. But of course, that couldn't last forever. Friends are friends, but I knew it was time to find any kind of work. I spent the next few weeks doing all sorts of glamorous tasks, from handing out flyers to delivering pizzas, and stayed in motels that should have just been called anti-luxury zones. The local bedbugs must have welcomed me like a VIP guest. Each morning, I'd wake up thinking this was just a nightmare, and one day, I'd open my eyes back in my room. Spoiler, that didn't happen. But eventually, fate, or maybe just luck, smiled my way. A few months and dozens of odd interviews later, I finally landed a job at a big company. Not my life's dream, sure, but at least the paycheck allowed me to start stabilizing a little. Long days and nights in the office, a job that could drive a Buddhist monk mad. But I held on. Slowly, I started climbing the career ladder, though honestly, it felt more like I was clawing my way up a soap wall. And after a few months, I managed to rent a tiny apartment. Calling it an apartment was generous, more like a box with a door, but it was mine. My own space, even if it had a microscopic kitchen and an even smaller shower. That moment when you realize you don't have to answer to anyone but yourself, it's something else. That long-awaited sense of independence was finally a reality. Every night as I fell asleep, I thought, "Hey Leah, how's that for a plot twist?" I pictured her face when she found out I wasn't the sad loser she always loved to make me out to be. Years passed, and by then, I'd become the person I dreamed of being since that day I got kicked out. I had a stable job and a circle of people who knew me not as the guy whose sister threw him out, but as Max, who made it on his own. I suppose you could say I was now a respectable member of society. Sounds boring, but believe me, it was immensely satisfying. Then, one day, a mutual friend let slip that things had taken a nosedive for Leah. Her great and unbeatable business was on the brink of bankruptcy. I found myself thinking, well, isn't this just a gift from fate? Oh, dear sister, how the tables have turned, I chuckled, picturing her face when she realized her brother, the one she'd thrown out, was now on top, while her world was crumbling. My parents, of course, were in a state of confusion. Leah had always been their golden girl, but even they were starting to see that her perfection had tarnished a little. But knowing them, I figured they'd never admit it out loud. They kept playing the role of Leah's adoring fans, although even they were beginning to have doubts about her flawlessness. The time had come for my triumphant return. When I walked into my parents' house, they looked like they'd seen a ghost. They probably thought I'd either lost my way or gotten so successful that my shoes would never grace their carpet again. Well, surprise, folks! Leah, of course, tried to put on her divine arrogance. That condescending look she had down to a science, the one where she looked at me as though I were beneath her, as though my mere presence was a lucky blessing. Max, dear, what brings you here? She managed to say it like I'd just crawled out of my pathetic life for a scrap of her attention. I shot back with something like, just decided to check in on my favorite family drama club. But now it was clear. Her influence had faded. My parents, perhaps for the first time, were beginning to see that their perfect daughter was far from perfect. Leah tried to keep up her act, but I could see right through her. There was fear in her eyes. And you know what? I was more than ready to show her that her reign was officially over. That night, it started like the usual family show. Leah was once again playing the queen card, trying to drag my miserable life through the mud. Her classic, Max, you probably didn't realize, but we're just on different levels. Yes, Leah, we're on different levels. You're at the bottom, and I'm here just for the entertainment. But at that moment, something snapped inside me. I didn't just remember every dirty trick she'd pulled to tear me down. All those small and big betrayals came flooding back, and I knew it was time to put an end to this. I slowly stood up and, looking her dead in the eye, said, You know, Leah, I've played your game long enough. But since you've decided that tonight is humiliation night, get ready. Because tonight, the star isn't you. At first, Leah laughed, like this was just another one of my weak attempts to look confident. But the further I got into how she'd lied, manipulated, and used everyone in her path, the more her smile started to fade. Oh, and remember the earring story? I threw in, enjoying the fear creeping onto her face. Yeah, I remember your crocodile tears, accusing me in front of everyone. Tell me, how did that really go? My parents listened in silence. Their faces grew darker as I spoke, and I could see their idealized image of Leah shattering before their eyes. It was like seeing adoring fans realize their idol is a complete fake, and the more I spoke, the more disappointed they looked. When I finished, Leah could no longer look me in the eye or pretend. At that moment, she finally realized. Her mask had completely slipped. My parents, her biggest fans, were beginning to turn away, and for the first time in her life, she was truly alone. No support, no fans, no respect. Slowly, she sank to her knees, trembling with the fear of losing everything she once thought she owned. Max, please forgive me. Her voice was filled with panic, like someone who finally understood they had lost everything. But you know what? I didn't care in the slightest. I just stood over her, feeling the sweet justice I had long awaited.